Hello, this is Cherisse LaSalle, and I'm submitting this video for the Associate Trainer program. This is my 9-year-old off-track thoroughbred Charlie, who I've had for just over a year now. You may have seen him in a couple of previous submissions that I did, and Charlie has come a long way. He came off the track as a 7-year-old and had only been off the track about 3 months before I adopted him. And when I got him, he was a real mess. He had a lot of physical issues, a lot of mental issues as well, I would say. He was really anxious. Whenever I would bring him in the arena, he would get really stressed out concerning work. So this Art2Ride training has helped him tremendously. As you can see, he's very relaxed now about the work, and he even enjoys it now. So I did want to mention that the purple wrap on his hind fetlock is just because he nicked himself, and I'm trying to keep it from getting infected. So anyone who's wondering what that's about, I thought I would ease your curiosity. So this is work in hand, which means that we're basically working the horse the same way that you would when you're on their back, but you're doing it from the ground. There are lots of reasons why you would do that. I'll try to go over some of them briefly. One reason is to teach the horse to move away from pressure on their side. In this case it's the whip against their flank where your leg would touch. And you're getting them to move away from that pressure and into the contact with the outside rein. So one key thing here is you need to have a steady contact, and that's probably one of the hardest things about work in hand, is learning how to have an elastic, fluid contact that gives whenever the horse stretches and takes up the slack whenever their head pops up. Another reason why we do work in hand is to help get the stretch. As you can see here, I'm asking him to step further under the center of his body with his inside hind leg. The purpose of that is every time he steps further towards his spine with his inside hind leg, he's actually pushing the back up, and those muscles are then able to engage, and that energy that's coming from that hind leg stepping further under the center of his body then pushes up through, and the neck and head just naturally comes forward and down and out into a nice stretch. So another reason why we do work in hand is to prepare the horse for ridden work. You can teach them a lot of the same things from the ground that you would teach them from their back, and a real bonus here is that you are able to focus completely on your hands, which is something you can't do when you're on their back because you have a lot of other things to worry about, like what are your legs doing, what is your back doing, what are your abs doing. So in the work in hand, it's really beneficial for the rider to learn how to keep that steady contact and how to give at just the right moment. It's very difficult at first, but you will get better if you just practice. You don't even have to have someone there to help you. I mean, it definitely would be a benefit if you can have someone help you, but if you can only do this on your own, you can definitely get better at it. I was completely awkward and didn't understand how to do this at first, but since I submitted a couple videos for critique, I got some help, and I feel a lot more confident now about doing this work, and I actually really enjoy it. So if anyone is feeling like, I just can't do the work in hand, it's so difficult, just keep trying, because you'll get it. So here he's giving me a nice stretch, and when he gives me that nice stretch, I just try to do nothing. I just try to follow, and sometimes I will stop him. If I can get something really good, I stop him right away so that he knows that he did the right thing. So now moving on to the lunging work. I actually did probably 20 minutes of work in hand before this. So a lot of times when I do that, I'll just go right to the trot work on the lunge line because I'm able to get Charlie to give me a lot better work in the work in hand at the walk than on the lunge for whatever reason. So right now I try to do work in hand for my walk work, and then I do the trot work on the lunge line. And every horse is going to be different, so it's going to depend on your particular horse that you're dealing with, whether you should do more walk work on the lunge line or whether you should try to do that work in the work in hand. Generally, I think people are able to affect the horse's body a little easier doing the work in hand once they get the hang of it. But don't worry, if someone doesn't feel confident doing the work in hand, you can absolutely just lunge at the walk trot and then eventually canter. Charlie is not at the point of cantering yet. As you can see, when he starts trotting, he's pretty out of rhythm. He looks kind of all over the place. He looks a little bit rushed. His head keeps popping up. He doesn't look relaxed when he starts out. But as he goes, you'll see that the work changes quite a bit. So I just give him the time that he needs to settle into the work and keep asking for that hind end to swing a little bit to the outside of the circle. The purpose of that is you want their inside hind leg to be stepping further under the center of the body, like I said. So you're going to ask for their haunches to swing almost outside of the circle a little bit in order to get that hind leg to step under the belly. And that will facilitate the muscles activating in the top line and the core, and then the head and neck will just come down and out on its own. So here he's starting to settle into the work a little bit. He's starting to slow down a little bit, which is something with Charlie, I have to be careful. It's really tricky to get him at the perfect pace for him because he tends to go too slow most of the time, but then when I ask him to go forward, he gets tense and rushes. So I've been working on just asking for a little bit more energy out of him. And he's starting to make the connection that when I ask him to go faster, it doesn't always mean, actually it should never mean throw your head up and hollow and go too fast, which is what he tends to do. So I try to ask him gently, because if I ask too much, then he'll just go hollow and get tense. Here he's starting to get rhythmic. You can see those two pair legs, the diagonal pair legs that move together in the trot should be moving at exactly the same angle and speed. Should be like a pendulum swinging perfectly in time. And he used to be completely not rhythmic at all for many months when I first started working with him, and he's developed a nice rhythm. Once I let him settle into the work, he actually is pretty rhythmical now. So that's a big improvement. Like right here, you can see those legs are just moving perfectly together. He's got a nice swing. You want to look for the back lifting, especially right behind the saddle, as you can see there. You also want to look for their step to get a little more bounce and spring in it. And I stopped him just then because I felt really happy with what he was giving me. So a lot of times with him, since he's a little bit more of a laid back horse, he really appreciates the break in the work. So I give him, as a reward, I'll stop him from trotting on occasion and just let him walk a circle or two around me, and then I'll ask for the trot again. Because for him, that's a nice break. It's not always ideal because it kind of pulls the horse out of their zone, so to speak. But if you've got a horse that really tends to be slow. Sometimes it can be helpful just to reward them that way. But then don't let them be too slow in the walk. So the walk has to be a reward, but it also is work at the same time. So here I'm asking him to stretch, and he gives me a nice stretch. You can see his back kind of pushing up. So here he's moving too slowly. He gets a bit stuck. As you can see, he's not really going anywhere. So I think one of the trickiest things about this type of training is just figuring out how the delicate balance of too fast versus too slow, how that all works, because you have to get the horse moving with enough forward energy that the work is actually useful. If they're too slow, the work is not going to benefit them. But if they're too fast, again, the work will not benefit them because they'll be rushing around hollow and on the forehand. So here I'm trying to ask him to yield that hind end a little bit away from me, trying to get him to step further under the center of his body so that his back will push up. But looking at this video now, I see that I should have been asking for more activity from him first. Here he's starting to pick up speed a little bit. That's a little better. This particular day was very hot compared to the days before it, so he was feeling very sleepy. So this work is slower than our usual work. I didn't realize it at the time, but I should have been asking for more activity from him. That's getting better. See how his back is pushing up as he takes those steps under his belly? And this horse had no top line at all when I got him, and he actually lost quite a bit of weight after I got him because he had ulcers and he wasn't eating, and I treated him for ulcers, but it took a long time to get him to finally start gaining weight. And I would say he could still use a little bit more weight, but he's almost at his ideal weight. But all the top line he has gained is from doing work like this. We haven't been cantering. We have been actually barely trotting. We've been mostly walking the past year. And so I want to encourage anyone who has a horse with issues, like my horse has had a lot of back pain issues. You can do a lot in the walk. You can build a lot of muscle in the walk. So don't be discouraged if you can't trot your horse or you can't canter your horse. You can still work them if they're sound and if your veterinarian says that it will be okay. So Charlie's back is doing so much better, and it's largely because of this work. I don't know. I'm suspicious that he may have kissing spines because when I got him, he had a really bad hunter's bump, and it's been gradually going away, and the work always makes his back feel better, which makes me think maybe some of his spinal processes are actually rubbing a little bit. But he's getting better and better, so that's all we need. And now he's to the point where he's almost pain-free. A lot of days I'll go out and feel his back before I exercise him, and he won't have any pain, which is amazing because it used to be that he would always have pain before the exercise, but immediately after it, he would be pain-free. Now he's pain-free almost all the time. And this is a pretty nice trot, he could be a little more active. This is his hard side, so I always try to do it after his easier side, to give him the best possible chance of being warmed up and mentally prepared to do the work. So he used to go at a crawl on this side, and I was a little bit afraid to push him too much because I didn't know what was going on. But now that he's feeling so much better, I'm trying to ask for a little more of him. I still try not to push him beyond what he's capable of, beyond his, too far beyond his comfort zone. You want to think about when you go to the gym, how do you work out to build muscle? You gradually increase the difficulty. So with this side for him, he's gradually getting better and better and able to go a little faster than he was before. See how his stride right now, he's starting to take bigger steps. Watch his hocks. They're starting to make a circle. He's starting to take a deeper step under his body. And see how his neck comes out and he gets a little bob in his head. That's a really good sign because that means that this energy is coming all the way through his body and that he's completely relaxed. So for him, this quality of work, especially on this side, is really, really good. Watch his back right here. You can see it pushing up. He still has a long ways to go. There's still a dip behind the saddle, but he's so much better than he was. Like, this work is really good for him. And as you can see, sometimes his head still pops up. He's not 100% consistent. That's really nice. So even though he's slow here, the thing that I'm looking for is how much of a circle his hocks are making and how big of a step is he taking, because it's okay if he slows down as long as he's taking nice big steps, not short choppy steps. He used to take only short choppy steps in the trot. He couldn't even come close to tracking up. And now he's able to, most of the time he almost tracks up, and sometimes he even does track up, which just means the hind foot falls in the footprint of the front foot. That's what tracking up means. So you want to always keep a nice steady contact with the bridle and the bit. You want to have a giving, elastic contact, so every time that the horse is doing what you want them to do, you want to give a little bit with your hand or your elbow, whatever, it depends on how you're holding the lunge line, but you just give a little bit. It shouldn't be noticeable necessarily to onlookers, but you're just giving a little bit. But you have to keep them on the circle as well, so you don't give it away completely. Like, this is getting really nice for him. See that little bit of bounce in his trot? He didn't have that before. Like this. You can see he's kind of bouncy now. So another thing to keep in mind when you're lunging is that it's a good idea to walk with your horse so you can be a little closer to them. If your whip isn't super long, you're not going to be able to touch them with it if you're in the center of a large circle and they're way out on the end. So if you've watched some of these videos and you're wondering why do these people always walk with the horses, that's the reason why. You've got to be close enough so you can touch them with the whip if you need to. really good for him. So I try to pick a moment when I feel like it's his best moment to stop him. I don't always get it, but sometimes you just have to take something that's close enough. But I'm always looking for that perfect moment to reward him. So if he gives me some kind of work that's a much higher level than anything he's given me before, I'll stop him because that's his reward, and that's how he'll know he did the right thing. Another thing that I've been doing with him is insisting that he give me a good stretch before we are done, in the walk I mean, because he doesn't give me as good quality of work in the walk as he used to on the lunge. And so I'm trying really hard to keep asking until he gives me something good before he's allowed to stop. So that's part of what you're seeing here, is that I'm asking for a stretch. I'm asking for him to step under the center of his body with his inside hind leg and lift his back up. But he isn't as willing to do it as he used to be many months ago. And I don't know, it could be because he's developed a lot of muscle and so he doesn't need to as much as he did. That's pretty good right there. But anyways, that's getting good. That was actually quite nice. So I stopped him then because I felt like he gave me some really good quality work, even if it was just for a few steps. So now we have the ridden work, and I have ridden this horse maybe 8 times since I adopted him in March of 2016, so a little over a year ago. And the reason why is because excuse me, he's had so much back pain, I didn't want to make it worse or cause him to hate being ridden because it hurt. I didn't want to take that chance, so I've been doing most of the work the past year just from the ground. And so you will see that our ridden work is far from great. It's just the beginning. So for this work, I'm trying to think about getting his hind end to activate and push his back up, but it's really difficult for him. He's not used to it under saddle yet. As you can see right here, his back is pretty hollow there. So I would say the work in hand and the lunging is actually much better for him because he's able to do the work a lot better. However, as I also said, we've been doing this work for about a year now, and I do think he's strong enough to carry me and begin to learn how to lift his back under saddle. So I think it's just going to take some more practice on my part of figuring out how to get him to lift his back when I'm riding him. And that's going to be using the lateral work, doing things like shoulder in or shoulder 4, a little bit of leg yielding, circles where you're trying to get the haunches to kind of move out a little bit, like you're trying to get the inside hind leg to step under the body. So those things, just like in the work in hand and the lunging, will help him to step under and lift his back. So as I'm riding him here, I was thinking about trying to get him to step under and lift his back and stretch. And he's trying, but I think my biggest problem in this ridden work is that he's too slow. There's not enough activity. And I did not realize that at the time, but now that I'm watching this video, I can see that he's way too slow. So that's a big thing that people need to realize when they're doing this work, is that if your horse is too slow, it's not going to benefit them. You also don't want them to be too fast, like I said. If you're wondering why my hands are so wide, that is because when you're training a horse, you have to keep a steady contact with the bit at all times, which is really tricky, but one of the things that we do to facilitate that is we widen our hands when the horse's head is up, and then the hands come together when their head stretches down, and you'll see that I do that. The purpose of that is because when their head stretches down, they take up all that rein out of your hands. And then when it pops up again, suddenly you've got a whole bunch of slack in your reins. And if this is happening every other stride, you don't have time to gather up your reins over and over and over again. So we just widen our hands because that allows us to keep a steady contact without trying to gather up the reins every 2 seconds. This is not how you ride later on. This is just how you ride when you're training a horse. So I think I do need to work a little bit more on responding a little quicker with my hands, that when he does go to stretch down, that I put my hands a little bit together again, how they should normally be when you ride. See, I'm lifting my hands up here, up and out, to try to keep that contact with his mouth. And you always want to have a nice, gentle, elastic contact. You want to try to have as light of a contact as you possibly can while still having a contact. So here I'm doing a little bit of leg yield. Just a little baby one. And he started to stretch, but then he came back up. And then he kind of got stuck. There, he stretched a little bit. But again, he's not really pushing his back up here because he's not active enough. He's moving too slowly. As you can see, his hind legs are kind of trailing out behind him, which is not our goal. And I can also tell that his hocks are not making as round of a circle as they were before. Although here he starts to get a little better. That's a little bit better of a pace. Still could be a little faster than that. Another thing that could potentially be a problem is that this saddle is a treeless saddle. I don't own a saddle yet because I've been waiting to see how his back would do before I purchased one, since they're very expensive. I didn't want to buy a saddle and then find out my horse was not even going to be rideable ever. So now that he is rideable, I need to purchase a saddle that fits him better, and I'm working on that. But this particular saddle, technically it shouldn't harm him because it's treeless, so it doesn't have a metal structure in it that could hit his shoulders or pinch him anywhere. However, I know enough about saddle fit that I can tell it's not a great fit for him, and so I wonder if having a better fitting saddle would help him to really lift his back more. So hopefully I will be able to get a saddle that actually fits him very soon, and then give him the best chance to do this work well. That's actually the pace he needs right there. That's how fast he needs to be moving. And see how he started to step under deeper? And there he slowed down again. So I need to be more conscious and more aware of how fast does he need to be going, how much energy does he need to have in order for this ridden work to be effective. But since I haven't really been riding him, this is all just in the very beginning stages for both of us. We both have a lot to learn. And that's getting better. There, that was actually not too bad. So I think I did a circle to try to get him to step further under his body, but the problem here is that he's just a little too slow. But I've been concentrating on trying to make sure I keep myself back enough. Oh, I'm about to run out of video. Thank you for watching.